Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, you have that dream of Macy's at the beginning about the other Harry, because obviously the way he's acting, you're like, oh, that's not the real Harry. But then immediately I'm like, yes, because obviously it turns into a thing later on because Macy and Harry are alone. And I just love the fact is, like, it's a bit awkward for her because I'm like, dude, I like what they're doing with this storyline too, because it's something I keep talking about and I can't help it. It's like they take stuff from the original show and they kind of take it and kind of remix it a little bit. Because I'm like, I really do believe there is going to be like a Harry and Macy thing. Because obviously whoever this other Harry is, he's kind of drawing Macy in, but the whole thing of like, where it's like, oh, it was so forbidden between Leo and Piper, like this would be even more forbidden because it's like, oh, one of your charges, she's also a demon and you're a white lighter, so if something ever happens because of that, that'd be interesting in itself. But I don't know if they necessarily go down. I'm so curious to find out who this other Harry is, and is he just a shapeshifter or is he something else entirely? Is he actually a part of Harry? Like what led to his creation, whatever the case may be. Maybe there's a little more secrets held with Harry's past. Obviously, we've dived into it, so it seemed like he was just a normal person, but maybe his being brought into this world by the elders was a little different from other cases. Maybe something was kind of shady about his creation as him being turned into a white lighter. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, they're trying to save a witch named Layla. She's the niece of the two witches that died at that bed and breakfast place in Vermont. So obviously Maggie and Mel have to stay behind because they don't actually have any powers. Because at the very least, Macy has her demon powers and Harry can heal her if need be. So it's kind of like, oh, we're kind of useless, which obviously Mel doesn't take too kindly because it's like the fact is just because I don't have my powers means we have to kind of stay behind because she's like, and Maggie's trying to make her feel okay. It's like, it's okay to be on a B team. She's like, I'm not B team. I'm A team at least A- team. I'm like, oh, it's because she's usually kind of like, because she doesn't, I think like with everything that's going on, she doesn't want to feel kind of useless. And she even kind of, the lady opens up safe space. It's like, oh, how are you going to change the world today? I'm not, because apparently I'm useless. And it's just like, oh, you kind of feel bad for Mel. But nevertheless, it's actually kind of interesting because Mel and Maggie actually have to deal with something personal in this episode because, for one, Maggie finds out that like everyone thinks they're dead. That basically, I guess like I guess there's rubble left from where their house used to be. Because I'm like, because it's supposed to be a protocol, so maybe something was set up in advance to make it so that yes, the house disappears, but maybe like magically one was there, but made it look like it was burned down. So like everyone. Like I said, it's like almost cutting ties completely with everything and everyone from season one because everyone's just going to assume because she looks up and it's like, holy crap, I'm dead. Everyone thinks we died in a house fire, so no one's going to be coming looking for them. It's not going to be like, oh, it's like, which is sad too because like, a lot of her friends are going to think she's dead. So, I mean, that's kind of sad when you have to think about you having to completely cut your life off from everyone. I mean, truth be told, Mel never, and it's kind of actually sad, Mel never had any other friends. Like, the only ones who had friends, Macy, we only know about work friends. Maggie's the only one that, she was part of her sorority and everything. So it's like, she had friends. Like, she's the one we saw interact with other people more often. I mean, to be fair, Maggie's kind of like the life of the party. Macy and Mel, not as much. So it's just kind of sad. But along with that news, they find out that their dad, technically just Mel's dad, because obviously Maggie and Macy have the same dad, but apparently he died of a heart attack, and it's like, oh, maybe hearing the news about us dying, he died, which obviously Maggie wants to go to the funeral, which Mel is kind of like, no, he was not in our lives, he wasn't a good guy, he was a loser. But obviously for Maggie, it's like, regardless of all that, he might not have been the perfect dad, but he tried his best. The fact of the matter is, he wasn't always there, but when he did, he tried. So the fact of the matter is, she has an attachment to this dad and not the dad. Well, because obviously there was a whole thing last season about, learning more about her dad, that side of her family, because for her, it's like, obviously her and Macy share the same dad, but it was a dad she never really got to know. So she doesn't have that same connection as a guy that raised her was in her life, which is, you have to use the term raised very loosely. So she ends up going to his funeral, but like there's so few people there, and it's just like, oh. And it's actually kind of, well, luckily Mel was able to show up and attack the fake Harry who had shown up. And I think it makes sense out of anyone, Maggie be like, whoa, you're not Harry. Because obviously she doesn't have her powers, but her instincts, her empath ability probably, like, there's some sliver of her empath ability still there for her to be like, whoa, some your energy is just kind of off and not right. So it's like, I think it's kind of very befitting that Maggie would be the first one to be like, well, you're not Harry. So, but obviously for her, like I said, Maggie is like, yeah, I know it's stupid and everything, but it's because it's also interesting because, like, in the grand scheme of things, she is kind of the baby of the family, not in the sense of like, oh, the way she acts and stuff like that. She's the youngest, and obviously she feels a little. It's a little bit of a complication for her because she feels like, oh, I'm 20, but the fact of the matter is everyone treats me like a kid. Just because I kind of got this like happy disposition doesn't mean I can't make adult decisions. So she feels like she kind of gets trivialized as just being like, oh, I'm the kid's sister or whatever. Like, it's just like, oh, I don't know how to make adult decisions and stuff like that. So it's just interesting. Like, obviously she's kind of got that little bit of like, not necessarily baggage, but that's something she feels like she has to overcome and potentially overcompensate. But also it's like, hey, this is dad. The fact of the matter is he gave us gifts and stuff like that, which my mind immediately went to like the fact is, well, yeah, he gave you gifts to make up for the fact. It was almost a way to kind of like, it's not like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like it's not really a sorry thing. It's more so along the lines of like, oh, let me kind of compensate for the fact is I messed up, and it's like a gift is just a lame excuse for missing out on so much of your life. He was supposed to take Maggie to a ballet and everything. Like, obviously there's like a little ballerina in this little music box she had gotten, and Mel ends up revealing the fact is like, I'm the one who got that for you because Mom made up an excuse to be like, oh, the reason why dad didn't pick you up was because he had to work and stuff like that. So it seemed like that was a regular thing of like making excuses for him because they knew how brokenhearted Maggie was. So that's why Mel is super bad. Like, you can tell it kind of affects her because it's still kind of like, regardless of who he was, you can tell it still kind of affects her to be like, he was my dad, but it's still kind of the shitty things that he did. And also the fact is she probably won't forgive him for the fact is he constantly broke Maggie's heart. It's because, Mel's the one who bought the box for her, wrote the letter kind of him saying he was apologizing and everything, and she even says it's like, I didn't do that for him, I did it for you because it's like, obviously you're my sister and I care about you and love you, so I thought that was kind of neat. I also love the fact is the way the episode kind of sets up that they've kind of like they've got new people in their lives in their own corners, like Mel, the lady that the Wiccan lady that caught her stealing stuff and stuff like that, which is like, all right, that's a bond that Mel is immediately creating. So I'm really curious because obviously now that Mel doesn't have any powers, like she can probably rely on her to be like, oh yeah, she'll probably tilt her in the right direction when it comes to like mixing potions and stuff like that, which I think that's going to definitely be interesting because like obviously that was I feel like that wasn't a constant thing in season 1. Like, it came up from time to time, but I feel like we're probably going to get like a lot more potion mixing and stuff like that, especially because they no longer have the Book of Shadows. So it's something that they're going forward, they're probably going to have to write their own Book of Shadows, which I think is kind of a neat element, not unless it ends up being a thing of like eventually, if they use the power of 3 or whatever, it can bring the book back. I'm curious to see what ends up happening in that regard, but I think like Mel might go to her from time to time to like learn about potions and stuff like that. I like what this might mean. So she might not be full witchy, or maybe she is and she just doesn't recognize who Mel is, because not all the witches recognize each other, because when Layla saw because they're the renowned charmed ones, but I'm sure everyone's still under the impression the charmed ones are dead, whether it be like all the magical creatures or whether it's just witches in general, like, oh man, the charmed ones are gone, so there's that side of things. So she might be a full-blown real witch keeping it low-key, or she might just be someone who's in that Wiccan world, so she's like on the cusp of the witch world, but not really, So there's that. Then there's the dude that Maggie got the first aid from last episode. Looks like that's going to be kind of a bond on Maggie's side of things, because she's like, the fact of the matter is I kind of treated you a little shitty. I've kind of been acting a little crazy around you, and so the fact that you're so nice to me. So it's like that looks like that's going to be a kinship, which also turns out Maggie's also getting a job at Safe Space, because like, hey, we need a way to get to the witch board whenever we need to, instead of just stealing key cards from people all the time. So there's that side of things. So I'm interested to kind of see, I like Safe Space basically being their little hub of like, oh yeah, because that's where they're all going to converge. Because I guess the college kind of worked like that last season, because that's where Maggie was at, that's where Macy was at, and now we kind of, well, when their lab was in the at the college, wasn't it? Or am I being stupid? I'm pretty sure it was. Regardless, even Mel would kind of, because Mel had stuff associated with that, and also Harry worked at the college too. So there was that thing of like, okay, so that was kind of their hub as well as the house, and now they've got the house, and now Safe Space being a hub in many different regards. It's kind of like, hey, this is going to be our low key job, while also being the place that connects to where the witch board is and all that stuff. So, and also the big thing of like, also thinking about it's still crazy to me. Once again, taking stuff from the original show and just remixing it. Once again, I don't remember all the elders ever dying. I know some died over the course of the series, but I don't think all of them ever died. To think like none of them exist in this continuity is kind of crazy in this series. So it's just kind of interesting to think about. But nevertheless, on top of all that, like, I love the drive, and Macy's acting a little weird towards Harry and stuff. Like, I'm like, yes, there's that little bit of awkwardness where she's like, there's the song that plays on radio. She immediately turns it off, and the windshield wipers comes on. And she's like, okay, no music. And I'm like, it's kind of adorable. And then like, they get a little more demon-like because, and it's so interesting because I don't remember this being an original part of this series too. Once again, I always apologize for the fact is that I'm constantly comparing this to the original show, which I'm not trying to. I just like making comparisons in the sense of like, oh, this is what the original show did, and this is how this show remixed it in its own way, and I like that a lot. Like, I'm a real big fan of this like show, both the original and this one. So that's why I like comparing them, because just to be like, oh my god, they took this thing and they did it differently. I've talked about that. I gushed over it so much in season 1. I gushed over it in the premiere, so I'm just going to continue that. So if that gets annoying to you, I do apologize, but I just can't help it because I was a big fan of the original show, and I really, really like what they're doing with this show too. So it's kind of neat. But like, I don't remember there being a hierarchy in the original. I mean, obviously you had your more powerful demons like Cole and whatnot, but I don't really remember there being much of a thing of like literal names like the Primordials, who are kind of like the top 1%ers, and so on and so forth. Like, I didn't remember there being like basically 4 different classes of demons, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And apparently they're all gathering up. It's like, oh, there's supposed to be a war going on between the demons, but apparently they've kind of set that aside. What's also sad too, they weren't able to save that witch. Because I remember later on, Macy writes unknown. I was like, unknown? What witch? It's like, right, the one that died that Harry tried to save. I'm wondering, was Harry not able to save her because either the poison had already spread so far there was no saving her, or is it because Macy has a demon side, so maybe that subverted the poison? So, whereas the poison would kill a normal witch and stop even like Harry's healing, because no one else was affected, only Macy was. But I think maybe her demon side kind of kept the poison at bay. So I think that's where that side of things go. That's probably why he struck her, because he knew she'd be fine. It was probably supposed to kind of make her hallucinate and kind of bridge the gap between them more. I don't know. I am curious. Like, I guess maybe there's maybe like the demon blood that's in her kind of, despite the circumstances, it was a necromancer and stuff like that brought her back. Maybe it's still, I wonder, is there like I'm curious, like, does that the demon blood in her come from like something else? Like, is there like a hierarchy? Like, is she like demon royalty? Is she like part of the top 1%ers because of the blood within her? Like I said, I think we're definitely this season, especially without their witch powers, like, we're definitely going to see more on that demon side of Maggie. It doesn't seem like she's losing as much control, because I think it's a different thing, maybe. I'm curious to see how they handle that, because it doesn't seem like that demon side is taking control of her like it was last season. Maybe she's just gaining more control over it, but regardless, that's going to definitely be interesting to see that side of things. She did look, obviously she looks really good all the time anyway, but her demon outfit and everything, it's like, it looked really good on her and everything, so... sneaking into the club and everything, and I thought that's kind of interesting. Like, oh yeah, none of the demons, like all the demons were wearing bracelets to make it so they couldn't use their powers. Most of them, obviously, Godric was kind of an exception. But I guess it makes sense because all the demons were warring anyway. So it's like to make sure everyone kept in peace. But Godric's talking about the fact is, well, for one, the charmed ones are gone, the elders are gone, everything that kept them down. They talk about like basically. Essentially, it seems like the king of the demons, it was his name, Zagon, something like that. His heir is now around. Like, apparently he was wiped out 1,000 years ago. That's what led to like the groups all warring, because like everyone's trying to take his place, but no one successfully was able to. But now a new heir has arisen. It's like, and what was interesting, because even Godric was like, oh, like I guess he didn't know who the heir was. I guess even he doesn't know. It's like the heir is here, but I guess the heir hasn't revealed themselves yet. So that was really interesting. Luckily, Mel and Maggie showed up, luckily having cloaked themselves, so they were able to help out. And I love Harry's just like, because of how messed up his warping is, the fact is he warps and he's like, ooh, I did it, I nailed it, yes, and just immediately gets tackled to the ground because the demons are kind of slugging it out. So sadly now, because of cameras and stuff like that, it's like the demons definitely know the charmed ones are alive. Granted, they can't track them because without their powers. And Maggie's always going to have a connection to that other Harry because that poison hasn't completely healed. I guess is acting as some kind of like connection beaker. I wonder, is it the poison made from like his blood or something, the reason why it's able to connect to Maggie? And she still, to Macy, and she still has a scar from it. So, and it still looks like it's greenish, so it hasn't completely subsided. Like I said, I think her demon side is kind of helping with that potentially. So we'll see. Maybe because he's a demon and she's a demon, there's that connection, or maybe there's something else deeper. I don't know. I'm very interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us because, like I said, they find themselves in very, very interesting circumstances. Like I said, Maggie's dealing with the fact is of like, well, the fact of the matter is, I've kind of got to let the past, kind of not look to what was, but kind of look forward to what is and what can be going forward, with those circumstances. So I'm also curious to see what Mel, like I said, she probably won't necessarily get a job because like she'll probably be like, kind of like running the command board and everything. So it'll probably be a situation of like, oh yeah, keeping an eye out, making sure no witches are in trouble. Well, obviously Maggie's working at, like I said, brought up earlier, she's going to be working at Safe Space. So I'm curious to see what everyone kind of does going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.